If your business burned down tomorrow, would your team show up on your doorstep with a plan? If not, you need to take a look at who you've got, who you've hired, and how you've created your culture.
In today's episode, we sit down with Steph Tuss. Steph is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar global consulting company, Life Is Now, and a frequent co-host of the Business Daily News top-ranked podcast, The Successful Mind. We're going to be discussing everything from building an amazing culture, having psychological safety in that culture, how to attract A players, and how to hold people accountable without feeling like the enemy. With that being said, let's start the show. Welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver, and we have a special guest with us today, Steph Tuss. Steph, how are you?
I am so well. How are you guys?
Oh, we are so good.
We're so freaking excited to be talking to you today.
So Steph is one of our business coaches. Steph has been a huge motivation, inspiration, and leader in our lives. She was actually the one that got us started on the 5 p.m. solution.
Our healthy boundaries, separating work and life.
And you're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, business, Life Is Now. Before we get into what you do, you have a very special story, and it relates to the insurance space and leading a team. So before we get into leadership and what you need to do to lead a team and holding people accountable, if you don't mind, if you would share that story with us.
I would love to. So this story happened about a month and a half ago. I was heading to San Diego to actually attend a business conference, and this guy sat next to me. I was traveling by myself. This guy sat next to me, and I was working away on my computer. My most productive time, honestly, is either in the car or on an airplane because nobody can walk into my office or interrupt me. So I love working on a plane or in the car. And I was just like working away, had my headphones in, took my headphones out for a minute, and he leaned over and he's like, "I hope you don't think I'm really creepy, but I see you're using ChatGPT and I've got a lot of questions about it." And I was like, "I would love to talk ChatGPT with you." And I just started having this conversation with him, and I asked him, told him, what I did, and that I was a business owner. And he said, "Actually, I'm a small business owner too." And it turns out that he owns a power washing company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so we were just talking about business and how I'm using ChatGPT for our business. I actually ended up writing a whole promo email series for him on ChatGPT to show him, because it's so easy and so exciting for me. And we were just talking about business in general, and he was talking about a huge rapid growth that he's undergone in the last 8 to 9 months. And I said, "That's amazing. Congratulations." And we started talking about what he's built into his business to create that. And he said, "Well, actually, about, I think it was 16 months ago. I don't remember the exact number of months, but he said, about 16 months ago, my business burned down." And I'm thinking, when people tell me their business burned down, it usually means a bunch of clients left or they had team issues. And I'm like, "Oh, are you having a hard time hiring?" Because a lot of the service-based people that we've had conversations with, certainly in the trades, they're having a difficult time hiring good talent right now. And he's like, "No, actually, that's not it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? What do you mean your business burned down?" And he got really quiet. And he's like, "I don't normally tell people this." And I was like, "Oh man, this is going to be good." And he pulls out his phone and he scrolls and he finds this picture, and he's like, "No, really, it literally burned down." And I get emotional thinking about what his face looked like when he showed me that picture, because it literally was the foundation of the building that his business had occupied. There was nothing left of his business. This is a power washing business, right? So all of his equipment was in this building, in the garages and everything. And I was just like, "Oh my God, literally it burned down." I'm like, "What happened?" And I started talking to him about insurance. And it turned out that he only had dwelling coverage like the actual building coverage, but he didn't have coverage for the contents of the building. So it was like a $850,000 loss that insurance covered $300,000 of. Like insane. Like I was just like, oh my God. And it turned out he told me the story. His ex-wife was the one that applied for the insurance. She didn't know what she didn't know. The insurance agent didn't like say, hey, you really need this. He didn't know that they didn't have that coverage. So it was like it was missed.
Yeah.
Right? It was a oopsie. It was just missed. And he literally said, I went back to my house and I just was thinking, well, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy and like, there's nothing, like I can't recover from this. I don't have the money to be able to buy the equipment that I need to service my clients. Like there's just no way that I can recover from this. And the next morning, his entire team showed up on his front doorstep. They had gone to his competitors in the area and asked to borrow their equipment. They had loaded the equipment into their own cars. And they had showed up saying, let's go. We're going to do this. We got a plan for this. And they built everything back up. And the following 2 months were his best 2 months in revenue. And he was back up and running, back in business. Like the story, I was like, you're like, this doesn't happen, you know, like this doesn't happen, especially with a power washing company. I mean, these are like young guys that are, you know, like it's manual labor. Like what? In my mind, because I'm a total culture junkie, I'm so passionate about leadership. I started asking him questions like, why do you think they did that? Why do you think they showed up and like rallied around you? And he's like, well, you know, I don't know. I just treat people really well. And I'm like, come on, it's got to be a lot more than you just treating people really well. And he started talking about how he's created this culture within his company. He didn't even realize that it was a culture that he was creating. Like they would set goals together as a team. And then when they hit the goals, he would do something really special for them and include their families. Like he was actually kind of mentoring these young guys that he was also giving a job to along the way. And he provided a fantastic workplace for them where they felt safe. There was psychological safety. They could share ideas. And he made them feel like they were cared about. Like it's a huge testament to culture. And I always say this to our business owners. Look, if your business burned down tomorrow, would your team show up on your doorstep with a plan? If not, you need to take a look at who you've got, who you've hired, and how you've created your culture. Because without that, I'm telling you, people just would have started looking for another job. They would have gone to the competitors and said, hey, Tim's business just burned down. Are you looking to hire? Instead, they took it upon themselves to solve the problem for him because they knew he was gutted, like gutted. That's insane story. And I'm sitting there on the plane and I'm thinking, man, like, and he was so humble, like he was just like, he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, you don't understand how extraordinary this is that you've been able to build that with this group of guys, and the how you make them feel inside has caused them to consistently have your back. They care about what they do, period.
Well, and I think too, the competitor, like that's just who he is, to have a competitor say, yeah, I'm willing to also help this person out. Exactly. Like to have them go to a competitor and say, hey, Tim's just lost everything. Do you have any spare equipment that we could borrow? And then be like, yes. Yeah.
Like it just proves that he's that type of person. He's that generous. And the thing that killed me is that I was talking to him about these rewards, right? Like, so they hit a goal. What he does is he'll take them and their family bowling, or he'll rent a house with a swimming pool and he'll invite everybody to come over and they'll have a big picnic and the kids will be involved. Like he includes people that his people care about, right? In that culture. And he told me, he's like, you know, what's interesting that you say this is like, I've had 2 business coaches now tell me that that's a stupid idea and it hurts my profit margins. And I was like, tell me who those business coaches are because I want to call them right now and tell them they're wrong. Yeah. Like they're so wrong, right? You invest in your people and that comes back to you tenfold. And that's just a testament to this story is that, thank God he didn't listen to those business coaches. Their only concern was the profit margin. I mean, like imagine what would have happened had he not had the relationships and culture that he did. It's really phenomenal to me.
Such a powerful story, obviously. And thank you for sharing it because you listening, what you do every single day matters. It matters more than I think any of us give anyone credit for. That's why I always say insurance professionals have the most noble profession in the world. So, but I want to talk about culture here because not only that culture that you just explained, but I've got the culture that we experienced when we walked into your business was absolutely amazing. I mean, from the time we were greeted to just the warmness that we felt to everyone taking ownership in what they do. And so I would love to talk about some best practices you've seen, you coach to around how to establish an amazing culture like you have.
So I really believe that it all starts with your vision. So I don't think you can have an amazing culture without having a vision in place. And interestingly enough, Tim did have a vision in place. Like he knew where he wanted to go with his company and he knew what he wanted after his company. For us, everything starts with our vision. And when I say vision, I don't mean our mission statement or our purpose or our financial goal. I mean, what do we want the inside of our business to look like in 3 years? Kind of a 3D image. And you guys know like how strongly I feel about vision. But if I can paint a picture of what I want the business to look like, feel like, what I want to be happening in the business 3 years from now, and I can get everybody else to see how they play a part in getting us there and also being there with us, that's step one. Because you're all in alignment, you're all headed toward the same thing. And that vision actually guides your culture. What kind of culture do we need to be able to experience this 3 years from now? And then secondly, you got to have the right people on the bus. You could be like culture, and you've got B and C players on your team that are back channeling or creating chaos or drama behind the scenes. And it just creates a cancer in your business. So that's step two is you really need to make sure you've got the right people on the bus. The cool thing with a vision is that the wrong people, if you keep feeding them that vision, they'll self-select out every time. It happens. It's so interesting because, I run our business owners through this activity and they always say like, I'm really worried about how this one person's going to react to this vision. And I'm like, well, let's just see how it plays out. And every single time, guess what? That one person self-selects out and leaves to make room for the right person to join the team. So I think, to give you two things, those are the two key pieces in creating this is that everyone sees how they play a part in the vision and they're given the freedom to play that part, without micromanaging, without, all the wrong things that leaders do in some instances. And you've got a team of A players, you've got a team of people that are bought into the vision and want to go the extra mile and care to take you there.
So I want to get into A and B players, but before I do that, I want to unpack this a little bit for our listeners. So if they're listening and they're like, yes, I'm all about it. Let's start. Where do you start creating a vision? Like, what are some resources they can go to, or how's that process begin?
Sure. So it's a really, really simple process. And it's incredible how many people overcomplicate it and procrastinate on it. So I'm just going to say that up front. There's a really great resource, fantastic book called Vivid Vision, written by Cameron Herold, and his last name is spelled Herold. It was a game changer for us and our business, quite honestly. But basically, what you do is you take yourself away to a quiet place. Don't do this in your office. Don't do this at home where you've got, kids running around in the background or whatever. Take yourself to a quiet outdoor place and you create like a concept map of your business. So you write the name of your business in the middle, and then you think of all the different areas in your business. So you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got client success, you've got what are people saying about us, how we're making money, what we're selling, if we have curriculum or how we educate our clients, what's going on in finances, what's going on with media and social media and exposure. And you write all those categories out. And under each category, you kind of imagine yourself stepping into a time machine. And that time machine is transporting you 3 years into the future. And you step out of that time machine and you step into your business 3 years into the future. And you simply write down what you see, hear, and experience. Right? So one of the categories is environment. So what is the environment like in your business 3 years from today? What's happening with sales in your business 3 years from today? What's happening with your marketing 3 years from today? And you map it all out. And then you take all of that like mind dump and you put it into a paragraph form. This is where you can use ChatGPT again, by the way. So you put it in paragraph form, you upload it into ChatGPT, and you ask it, write out this vision and add imagery and flourish. Because the idea is that when you read this vision, you want to be able to see a mental picture of what this looks like. You want to be able to feel it in your body. There's emotions attached to it, and you want to be able to visualize it in your mind. That's how you create your vision. It's very simple. However, your vision is very personal to you. People resist the crap out of writing this down, and they resist even more sharing it with their team. So what I suggest is put it on your calendar, stick to it, and then have someone hold you accountable. Like everybody that does this with me, they have to tell me exactly what date they're sharing this with their team. And then I'm like, did you share it with your team? No, something came up. I'm like, of course it did. When are you going to share it with your team? Right? Because it's personal to you, and it's actually very vulnerable to share your vision with other people. Because what if they think it's dumb? What if they reject it? What if they're not in agreement with it? Then what? But the truth is that your team wants that from you. They want to know where you're going. They want to know why they're doing what they're doing, especially if they're A players. Like, why am I showing up and doing these things every single day? I want something that's more than a paycheck because I'm an A player, right? I want to feel like I'm a part of something. I want to help build something. I want to create more impact. I want to see our clients succeed. And it's interesting to me how often, when I say, have you shared the vision? And the business owner says, oh my God, you will not believe what's happened since I've shared the vision. We've got one person in a department totally unrelated coming up with ideas to help us achieve our vision in this area. They didn't feel empowered to be able to say anything because it wasn't their area anymore, but because this is our new vision, everybody's working together to get us there. So we're leveraging the gifts and talents of everybody rather than feeling like we as the business owner have to build this vision by ourselves.
I love it. When we did the exercise, it was
uncomfortable.
It was very very uncomfortable. But it was so good to really, because we had done 1 year, 5 year, 10-year visions before, but this was just it was a different feeling. It was a different way of thinking, because it's not only the vision, but where's the business going? Who's on the team? How does it feel? And what does the lifestyle look like that we want to, why are we doing this? And then the biggest thing that I'd love for you to talk about here is also, so it's one thing to create the vision. All right. Yep. But then it's really easy to put the vision back in the closet and not so how, what are you recommending? What would you recommend for someone that does sit down, they take the time, they create a new vision? How do they communicate that to their team? And then what does the consistency after that look like?
So I'll tell you what we do, which works really well. Every single Monday morning, we gather as a team when we read the vision. So I start. It matters who starts, because if you bring really crappy energy Monday morning to the vision, everybody else will match that, and your vision will be like, bleh, right? So I start, and I'm like, let's do this. It's vision time. Let's see what's happening. Let's read this through and take a look at, how are we doing here? Are we making any progress? Right? So our entire team reads it. I start, and it's broken into sections by, departments, and everybody takes a section, not their own section. Everybody takes a section and reads it. Usually takes us about 7 or 8 minutes to read through the whole thing. And then at the end, I'll say, okay, how are we doing? What's changed? So part of our vision is that our office has a homey feel and that it has updated testimonials that line the wall that tell our client stories. So for the last, I don't even know, 5 weeks, our office manager has been like pulling together all these amazing testimonials and ordering these frames and getting them in frames to put them up on the wall. So we're like, okay, that wouldn't have happened without the vision. And we're talking about how, and part of our vision is that we only work with people that we really enjoy working with, that are ideal clients. How are we doing there? We're attracting 90% now of our ideal clients rather than before where we were attracting like 50% ideal clients, 50% non-ideal clients, because our focus is on honing our message because of our vision, right? So we're constantly reading it every single week. And we're also constantly comparing, like, how are we doing? Are we moving closer to our vision? Or are we moving further away from our vision? So it's not necessarily attached to metrics. That's something else that we do in the business. This is really more qualitative than quantitative. Like the whole purpose of the vision is to get people galvanized and excited about where they're going. And everyone focused on seeing the same thing in the same place at the same time. And it like my team members will say, it's so helpful to read this because look, guys, we're all small business owner. What happens during the week in a small business? Everything happens. You have upset clients. You have personal stuff. You've got team stuff. It's really hard to stay focused because there's always something pulling at you, drawing your attention. But even just setting aside that small time to just really refocus and then say, okay, how are we doing? Like maintains that it's not lost in the shuffle of life and business.
So you bring up a good point there. When you talk about reading your vision and everyone sharing and they're holding themselves accountable, you said something earlier that I want to touch on, and that's psychological safety. And it seems like that has to be set before you feel comfortable, before your team feels comfortable sharing their ideas. So touch on that a little bit and share what that means.
So psychological safety is a term that was coined by a researcher named Amy Edmondson, and she wrote a really great book called, I can never remember, The Fearless Organization. Yay! The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson. And it's quite a read. Like it'll take you a while to get through it. But it's based on the premise that psychological safety means that people aren't afraid to speak their mind, to debate, to create positive conflict, because they're not afraid of ramifications. They're not afraid of losing their job. They're not afraid of being humiliated. They're not afraid of being embarrassed. So if you're a leader that can create that psychological safety, that's where innovation occurs. When your business doesn't have psychological safety, people don't feel like it's safe for them to share their ideas because they might be stupid. There might be repercussions. There might be backlash. Or they might get fired. They also don't take risks because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake and then be embarrassed or ashamed or lose their job. So it's really important to build psychological safety if you want a team of people that will innovate and that will share their ideas, which you must have to grow and scale your business, because you cannot be the smartest person in the room. It's just not possible for you to be the smartest person in the room and also grow. So
I think this also goes into A and B players. So you have psychological safety. How do you build that? How do you sustain that? What does that even look like?
Yeah. So it all starts with you. So psychological safety is really about making sure that you allow for vulnerability in your business. It's very not like old traditional leadership, which was very authoritarian and rigid. This is about you as a leader showing your team that it's okay to be vulnerable. So what does that look like? That looks like I'm the leader of the company and I've just made a mistake. Instead of making excuses or blaming why the mistake happened, I take full responsibility and I say, guys, man, did I ever make a mistake? Here's the mistake that I made. Here's why I made that mistake. Here's what I learned from it so that it doesn't happen again. So you make mistakes okay. You show that you're infallible, that you are okay making mistakes, that there is a gift in those mistakes. And that gives your team permission to do the same. So suddenly they stop being afraid of making mistakes. Suddenly they start making decisions on their own without having to come to you to fix all of the problems and answer all of the questions. And that's just one single thing. Like my team will tell you, I apologize easily because I make mistakes, right? So if you apologize easily, they know she apologizes easily. I can apologize easy. I can take responsibility for my stuff. She calls out her own mistakes and says what she learns about it. That makes me feel safe to do that as well, right? And it's little things like popping into someone's office to just say, hey, how was your weekend? And looking them in the eye. It's when someone has a conversation with you, give them your full undivided attention. Don't be looking at your phone or doing something on your computer while they're trying to have a conversation with you. It's showing people that it's okay to be human and that you care about them as a human being. And there are like 150 different things that you can do to build psychological safety in your organization. But for me, I really think that we've built psychological safety very quickly because of my willingness to be vulnerable. Like me totally goofing up on a webinar and owning it in front of the entire audience and like laughing it off, right? Shows them that they can make a mistake and laugh it off too. I mean, we did a webinar one time. This was crazy. We did a webinar one time. I forgot to maybe I shouldn't tell this story.
Now you're like, hold on. All right, let's get it.
We did a webinar one time. We had like 1,200 people on this thing. It was our very first Zoom webinar, like kind of right in the middle of COVID when everyone had to pivot and go to Zoom. So we were doing like our first big event. There was like 1,200 people or something, 1,400. I don't know. A lot of people. And I forgot to set the Zoom so that people couldn't take control of our screen. And we had pornographic hijackers drawing penises on the screen. And I'm up there and I'm like, oh, okay, well, guys, that's not part of the show. We're really not about drawing penises. And then I said, never thought I'd say penis on a webinar in front of 1,200 people. And I had to I just had to own it. Like, whoops, we're learning. Like, stay with us, guys. We'll get this figured out. And then my digital media producers got it figured out and we moved on. But me doing that, showed the audience that I'm a real person and I'm vulnerable, which actually drew them in because I'm not some like fake person that's going to, get angry at something I can't control. And it also showed my team that it was okay that it happened, right? So they didn't mistakes are okay. We learned from it, never happened again. And now it's just like a funny story that we tell sometimes. Like, remember that time? But that's really how you build psychological safety is you allow vulnerability in your business.
That's good. So that's really good.
I'm over here chuckling because I can only imagine I would go off on so many tangents. Like, this is not OnlyFans. I'm so sorry. Like, I should have charged more money for the webinar. I didn't know this was going to happen. Like, my brain immediately would have lost control. So I love that you could keep composure.
Well, the psychological safety, it reminds me of what you said the other day. And it was kind of a meme, but it's like that teams are looking forward to being led by millennials because we're always like, how are you? How are
we're
you?
We're the moms and dads of the workforce. I think it's just we're shifting how we lead people, how we listen to people. It just looks different, and I think it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because someone said to me that was a leader of a company. They're like, I'm just really uncomfortable with authority. And I looked at them and I'm like, I do not consider myself an authority. In fact, I feel like I work for my team, not the other way around. Like, my job is to make them better. My job is to support them so that they can do their job better, so that the company grows. It's not so they can do my bidding or constantly come to me for the right answer. Like, this is not a good, healthy team. There's not an authority at the helm, right? It's a meritocracy. It's the best idea wins, not the person with the strongest opinion.
Well, and I think that also fosters the reason that you go into being a business owner or the insurance field is freedom. And if you're having everything bottleneck at you, you've lost all of that if you're not empowering your people.
Right. And the best way to empower your people is every time they come to you with a question, you respond with, what do you suggest? What do you suggest?
That's good.
What's your solution? So I've made it a habit not to solve anyone else's problems. They're not my problems to solve. I have enough of my own problems to solve. I don't need to solve everybody else's problems. So when someone comes to me with a problem, my team knows that they come with a couple of different options of how to solve that problem already. And then we just talk through what might be the best option. And they've done that because I've consistently asked, what do you suggest? Or what do you think would be in the best interest of the company? Which is the second question. What's in the best interest of the company? Because a lot of people, especially B and C players, will default to what's in the best interest of them. An A player will think what's in the best interest of the company.
And what you just hit on, I've got to admit, that is definitely a struggle of mine, because when somebody brings, I just want to offer a solution.
Yes.
And move on. And so I've really tried to work.
Well, look, that's what makes you a fantastic entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurial traits. You're problem solvers. You're resourceful. You can deal really well in chaos. Like, you're like, bring it on. So when someone comes to you with a problem, your innate compulsion is to answer it. But that's the opposite of what you need to do. Yep. That'll only take you so far, right?
Yep. So I want to touch just a little bit before we get into accountability, because I also want to go there real fast, because I've always struggled with accountability. But A players and B players, how, it's fun to talk about. We all want A players, but how do we actually attract A players? I'd love your opinion on this. So
first, A players like to work with other A players, and A players like to know what they're working toward. So they like to be a part of something bigger. And there's, I'm just full of books today. There's another great book that talks about A players and B players. It's called The Ideal Team Player, and it's by Pat Lencioni. It's a fantastic book.
Oh, so good.
And he really talks about an A player really has three qualities. They're hungry, they're humble, and they're smart. And by hungry, that means that they actually enjoy going above and beyond. Right? They don't blame. They don't I'm such a victim. They actually get energized by going above and beyond. They are humble, meaning they give appreciation to other people. So do they need to be the center of attention and take all the credit? Or are they the people that are the only reason we were successful is because my team is incredible, right? Or because this person did this, and they're constantly giving kudos. That's a humble person. And they're smart. And not the kind of smart like intelligence smart. They're smart in the terms of they understand how they affect other people. You all know the people in the world that are completely clueless about how they affect other people, right? They're the people that will take off their shoes and open a tuna sandwich in an airplane, right? Completely, they don't care. They're I don't care how I affect you. Not an A player in the working sense. So there are questions that you can ask in an interview to determine if someone's an A player, but it's not the answers that you're looking for. It's the energy behind the answers that they're telling you. But the big thing is that A players are looking to work with other A players. So if you hire an A player and you're constantly saying that you're going to do something and you don't, you're not being an A player, and they're not going to want to work with you for very long. Right? If you hire an A player and you're not humble, meaning you're not giving accolades, you're not giving appreciation, they're not going to want to work with you. If you hire an A player and they have no idea why they're doing what they're doing and how that impacts other people, they're not going to stay working for you. So you have to be an A player to attract A players, which means you have to be your word. Do what you say you're going to do. You have to create psychological safety in your business. You have to clearly communicate what it is why you're doing what you're doing. What's the impact that you want to make? What experience do you want to give your clients so they can see how they fit into that? And you have to make sure that they're surrounded by other A players.
How about compensation?
So compensation, A players will cost you more, but they will do the work of 2 B players and 3 C players. So yes, you will pay a little bit more for them, but they will pay you back in spades. Spades.
Okay.
All right, let's get into accountability, because conflict and holding people accountable, it makes my hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I'm like, okay, let's start holding people accountable. So how can you do this as a leader without feeling like the bad guy?
So you do this by setting up agreements. So the old form of accountability is some big guy in a suit tells you what you need to be doing in your business, what you need to be doing in your job. And then every year you have a review where he tells you if you did a good job or not. And then your compensation is based on that. And you have never had input into how you're being measured, right? Like totally archaic way of accountability. What we do is something called measures of success. So once a year and then quarterly, I'll say to my team, okay, based on your role, I want you to come up with 5 to 7 things that you do on a consistent basis that you think are the highest value to your role. Because let's be honest, I'm not in their role. Like, I think I know what makes them successful in their role, but I want to know what they think makes them valuable and successful in their role. And then I'll say, and I'll bring 5 to 7 things. And we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about what are the 5 to 7 things that need to be done consistently for you to feel like you're a success in this role. And so we have those meetings. And the fascinating thing is that they have way higher expectations for themselves than I brought to the table because they get input and they have a say. And then we agree on those. And so then those become agreements. And when you have agreements, you have buy-in. When you give someone an expectation, you don't have buy-in, right? When you make agreements, you have buy-in. And when you have buy-in, then if they're not hitting their own measures of success, that allows you to come up next to them rather than across from them and say, hey, I see you're struggling hitting your measures of success. How can I support you in making sure you're hitting those? Like, what's going on? How can I help? Rather than, you're not meeting your KPIs. This is unacceptable. You need to do something to meet your KPIs, right? So it allows you to come in as a support role, as an ally, because let's be honest, what's the goal? The goal is that those measures of success are hit. And when they're hit, the company wins. The goal isn't to make someone wrong or to discipline someone. The goal for this kind of accountability is a win-win for everybody. And it completely takes the conflict out of it. Because you're not coming at them, you're coming next to them and saying, hey, these are the measures of success that you agreed upon. So is it that these were too unrealistic? Like, has something changed? Or tell me what's getting in the way of you being able to hit this. And it's fascinating to me, because and then we follow up with conversations quarterly, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling about these? Because roles change and, small business is always in flux. And, I'll come to the table and they'll literally say, I'm not hitting this measure of success. Like, okay, let's talk about why. And I would have no idea what's going on without this conversation of like, why aren't you hitting your measures of success? Well, I'm writing it in my notebook, but then I'm not loading it into the right place. I'm going home and just not doing it. It's not that I don't want to do it. I just forget. So I'm like, okay, well, how about you put little Post-it flags in your notebook? And if you see Post-it flags, you don't leave the office until those Post-it flags have been entered. Oh my God. Great idea. Guess what? The measures of success are now being met. Right? So it allows for that collaboration of problem solving between two people. And the goal in mind is that everybody wins. The goal in mind is that those measures are hit. That's the kind of accountability that we practice in our company. It's not like, you did this wrong, you're not doing this correctly. It's everybody takes personal responsibility for their role. They're all very clear on what they're responsible for. And we've got agreements in place rather than these handed down archaic KPIs that, everybody thinks that they need to have in their business, but are actually counterproductive because they just make everybody feel bad.
How often so you're doing this quarterly, the measures of success. Are you touching base at any other point or?
Yep. Yeah. So I make it a habit to pop into offices. That's another way to establish psychological safety is going to them, either pop into their virtual whatever, or, we have a physical office. I know that if I Skype someone and say, hey, can I see you in my office? Immediately the response is fear, right? It goes back to childhood when you're called down to the principal's office, right? You're just like, oh shit, what did I do? I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
If I go to them and pop my head in and be like, hey, how's it going? how are your measures of success? You feeling good about them? Like, have you taken a look at them lately? And they're like, yeah, I'm feeling really good. I'm having a little trouble with this measure of success. And then it's a quick conversation of, okay, well, how can I help? And then I move on. And in most cases, like, they all hit their measures of success. Some cases, someone has set a measure that's too far of a reach and we need to dial it back. In some cases, someone's put a measures of success on their sheet that they really don't think is that important anymore. So we replace it with a new one that they think is more important. So it's constantly in this flux, but you have to remember that the goal is that the company wins.
Okay, I'm like tearing this one apart because I love this so much. Are you setting up measures of success and agreements towards a financial goal, or is this more vision based? Like, what are we bumping up against?
Nope. This is all what needs to happen for them to be successful in their role. So it's different for everyone. So if you've got sales, what needs to happen for them to be successful in their role in sales? One measure of success might be that they have a 65% close rate with all incoming leads. One might be that it might be as general as I leave everybody better than when I first found them, whether I sell them or not, right? And you can measure that by doing after surveys. One for a salesperson might be that they enter their data every day before they leave. Because without that, if they got hit by a bus the next day, nobody would know what's going on with their pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to have these conversations with your team members because what they think is important should match up with what you think is important. But because you're not 100% in their role, you might be missing something that's really important that they see that you don't. So it creates this amazing conversation. And it's not based on, everyone's got the vision in the back of their mind, but it really is, this is my role. How do I know if I'm being successful in my role? And if you walk into most companies and you ask the team members or employees that question, they'll say that I'm here on time. Like they don't actually know what makes them successful in their role, right? They don't know what that measure is. Where, our team, they know exactly what it means to be successful in their role. And if they're successful in their role, then that means that the company as a whole is successful. And then that means that we'll make more money because money is just a happy side effect of doing all the right things within a business.
All right. I've also got a follow-up question to this. And this could go back to an A player versus B player, okay,
Sure.
With where my mindset's going with this. But if you hire someone brand new, maybe they've never been in the industry, are you as the leader trying to, I don't want to say guide them, but giving them ideas on what it could potentially look like to be successful in their role, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So with a new hire, you give them, you're like,
Okay.
Here are your starting, like, this is what we think we need from you for you to be successful in your role. We're going to give you a quarter to work in this role. And then we're going to meet and I'm going to ask you, based on your experience, what do you think are the most important things that you do in this role that add the most value to the company? And then we're going to take a look at that and see if what we've given you is actually true and allow you some buy-in, because you have to give them something to shoot for when they're first starting.
Okay.
So good. I could do this all day long. I could lead you down so many different rabbit holes.
How much time you got, Steph?
Yeah, no. Steph's so good. Before we hopped on this podcast, we always ask, how much time do you have? This is how you know that this woman is fantastic. She said, I have blocked an hour out for this. I'm like, hell yeah, boundaries, baby. It's so good. If somebody wants to connect with you, if somebody wants to work with you, follow along. I know you have a lot of things going on. What's the easiest way to connect?
To me personally, the easiest way is through my Instagram account. I'm on it. Nobody's getting catfish. There's no like weird bot or weird like AI person answering my chat. It's me. So my Instagram is just at Steph Tuss. Or you can find all kinds of information about us on our website, which is lifeisnowinc.com.
And you have an incredible podcast.
I was just going to say the same thing. Your all's podcast is amazing.
The Successful Mind podcast is, I binge that. That's actually how I found out. Here's a fun fact for you listening. Steph and I have the same birthday.
Yes, we do.
January 6th, Capricorns unite. That's how I found that out, was on the podcast. It was the control freak one. I was like, probably should listen to this one a little bit. Steph, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, especially that story in the very beginning. I know all of us listening that are in the insurance space, it just reinforces how important it is, what we do every single day. And I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely. You've got to fight for your clients. They just don't see it. I mean, honestly, there are so many stories of that. You know, people underinsured, losing things because their insurance agent wasn't strong enough to have a hard conversation.
Yep. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Steph. And
my pleasure.
For you that is listening, thank you so much for your support. As always, time is the most valuable and important asset that we all have. We appreciate you spending time with us. Steph, thank you again.